All right, so that's kind of the general idea there, where we're going between ideally 1, 2, 3, 4 chords, and we're adding just a little bit of different phrasing to it. And it's really just taking this simple progression. I'm just changing something on bias effects real quick. I just put a noise gate so that way it's not a bunch of kind of random noise. But as I was saying, we're taking simple chords and we're just going to add some little fills to it, and we're going to emphasize some things and kind of color the sound a little bit more. So the 4 chords we're going to be using are going to be an E major. I just use the open chord, and that's just 2nd fret of the A and the D, 1st fret of the G. I'm just turning my camera a little bit so you can see a little bit better here. Right? So I'm using 2nd fret of the A, 2nd fret of the D, 1st fret of the G. All the other strings are open. Should sound like that. The 2nd chord I use is a B major, and this is a bar chord kind of thing. I play the 2nd fret of the A, and I bar the 4th fret of the D, G, and B strings. Okay? And then the next chord I play, I'm moving all the way up the neck to the 6th fret, and I'm using my thumb. And the reason I'm using my thumb here is because that's what's going to allow me to add whatever other, other kind of notes I want. So I could do... Right, and it just opens up your playing a lot more to be able to use your thumb. And in this case, I highly recommend using it. I don't recommend doing the standard kind of bar chord kind of thing like this, simply because it will make playing this a little bit more difficult once we add the little fills in. Okay, so that said, I'm playing the 6th fret with my thumb on the low E string. I mute the A string using my thumb. So it sounds like that. I'm playing the 8th fret of the D, 7th fret of the G, 6th fret of the B and the high E. So really I'm playing all the strings, but since I'm muting one of them, it's really 5 notes that are coming out. Okay? Take this shape, move that down 1 fret. So now my thumb's on the 5th fret, my ring finger's on the 7th fret of the D, 6th fret of the G is my middle finger, and my first finger is on barring the 5th fret of the B and the E. And that's our A major chord. So we have E major, B major, A sharp major. That's just a passing chord, and then we go to A major, and then we return back to E major. Okay, so now let's kind of get the idea of the little kind of fills that are happening here. Okay, it seems to be that that's kind of like a common fill, so I'm going to show you how to play that. All I'm doing is playing the open E, the low E, and then I do a hammer on 2 to 4 on the low E, and then I play 2nd fret of the A, and then I do a hammer on 2 to 4 on the A string. And then I play the E chord. So it sounds like this slow. Okay? And then I do it again, but I differentiate it a little bit by doing a slide to the 4 on the low E, so it sounds like this. And then we have another slide. And this is why it pays to kind of practice using different fingers and getting, the dexterity in check here. Because what I'm going to do is I play the B major chord, but then I do a slide for the 6 on the A string, and then I shift. Instead of having my ring finger bar the 4th fret of the D, G, and B, I switch fingers and I do a slide with my ring finger 4 to 6, and my first finger bars the 4th fret of the D, G, and B. So now I'm playing this chord. So it's the 6th fret of the A string, 4th fret of the D, G, and B. It sounds like that. So when I do it, it sounds like that. Then we shift over to our A sharp major passing chord. And then I move that down to A major. And then there's this little... something like that. I think it's... I would have to listen to it again, but I don't want to pull it up on my computer right now. But what I'm doing there is I keep my thumb on the 5th fret of the low E, and on the G string, I do a slide 4 to 6 on the G. And then I play the 5th fret of the B string. Then I play the 6th fret of the G. Then I do that slide again. And then I slide 6 to 4 down. So it sounds like this. And I go back to the E major chord. Okay? So I'm going to play that together just very slow, and then we can proceed from there. I can show you some tips and tricks on how to add different notes and really color the sound in different ways. So now let's do from the beginning. So very slow. Okay, that's the idea. Now let me play it up to speed. Okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself, but there, all I'm doing is just adding these other notes. And you might be saying, well, what notes, how do you know what notes to add? Like, how do you know that it's going to sound okay? How do you know that it's going to be all right? Well, first thing you got to do is let go. You have to just take everything on a leap of faith and be a little bit more inclined to make mistakes, because you might play a note, evidently, that might not sound as good as you thought it would. You know, and it's gonna feel kind of weird at first because you're like, oh, it doesn't sound good. What am I doing? I'm gonna stop playing. What you should do is explore a little bit. And my go-to trick for finding out what notes are gonna work here is, number one, you have to know your framework and your foundation. The foundation for music is always going to be, if you ever run into a professional musician, they're going to ask you, hey, what key are we playing in? There's really only two types of keys. There's either a major key or a minor key. There's nothing else, okay? So if you tell a guy, hey, we're playing in the key of E major, he'll know right off the bat, oh, okay. He kind of gets the idea of where the music is going to go. The chord progressions might be a little different, or it might be a little bit, might be really simple, might just be 2 or 3 chords, but it might be emphasizing different things based on that progression. So the first key of the foundation is knowing what key you're in. Second is having the structure, the framework. So if you've ever seen like when a house is getting built, you know how they have like all the structural, the frame for the roof and the walls and all that. They haven't filled anything in. It's just a bare bones frame. That's what the chords are. The chords are the structure that we're going to build upon. And that in turn is going to tell us, oh, okay, so if we're in this key and these are the chords we're using, now we can color in and fill in and create something unique and do something awesome. And that's where our scales come in. So if I know I'm in the key of E major, right off the bat, the first chord is E major, the second chord is technically just a B, and the third chord, if you take away all these other fancy little passing chords, it's really just E, B, A, back to E. It sounds like a pop song, and it kind of can be, depending on how you play it. But in this case, we're adding all these like bluesy, kind of like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix. Etc., etc. We're in the key of E major. We're just adding these different kind of, little chords and notes and stuff. But ideally, even the slides that we do here, for example, this B major, sliding that 4th fret to the 6th fret, that's all in the key of E major. And in turn, we can use the E major scale. So if you know different places where you can play the E major scale, so for example, I know there's one right there, and then I know another place up here, and then I know over here. So all these places that you can play an E major scale, they're going to help you kind of connect the dots here. So once you know what scale you can use, what helps also is having a little bit of music theory knowledge. So if I know I'm in the key of E major, I can use the E major scale. Well, what is the relative minor of E major? That would be, technically, if you play an E, if that is our key center, all you have to do is move that down 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, and that note is a C sharp, so that means C sharp minor is our relative minor, meaning that the notes of C sharp minor and the notes of E major are exactly the same. They're the same exact notes. The only difference is that you're starting on C sharp. So if you pay attention here, right here, if we play E major, it's E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, E flat, back to E. And then if you notice your C sharp minor, it's C sharp, E flat, E, F sharp, A sharp, or G sharp, A, B, C sharp, right? They're all the same exact notes. So you can take those notes and do whatever you want with them. So for example, I know the C sharp minor scale right here on the 4th fret, right? And I know it again over here on the 9th fret. So if I'm playing E major here, let's say I want to create my own little fill. Let's do something like, something like, that sounds kind of cool. So let's play off of that. And what I'm doing there is I'm borrowing 4th fret of the G and the B strings, and I do a hammer on 4 to 5 on the B string, and then I do 4, 6 on the G, and then I do a hammer on pull off 4 to 6 on the D, and then I slide down to the 2nd fret and then play the E chord. So it sounds like, actually it's just That's really what it is. I don't slide down 4 to 2 on the D. I got that wrong. It's actually just a 4-6 hammer on pull off. And then, you know, there we go. Now I created a little fill. Okay, that sounds cool. What else can I do? Well, I can play, you know, something like, you know, instead of doing, what if I do something like, and there what I'm doing is just sliding 4 to 6, 4th fret on 4 to 6 on the A, 4th fret of the D, and then 4-2 on the A string. So it sounds going straight into that B. So again, you can learn and kind of memorize using shapes if you really have to. But what helps you the most is just knowing what notes are used for E major. You can memorize what the notes are, or the easiest way is you can memorize the intervals, meaning the spaces between the notes. So I know that, you know, going from E to the next note of the major scale is 2 frets, and then the next note is 2 frets, the next note is half a fret, right? Or 1 fret, I mean, not half a fret. Half a step, but it's only 1 fret. Then 1 whole step, 2 frets. Whole step again, half step, or whole step, I mean, and then a half step at the end. So all together, it's... And that's the best way you can learn it, is learning the scale going along one string. So think of the scales going this way instead of going this way, okay? And that will allow you, you know, over time, you're going to be like, oh, wait, I know that this note is part of that scale and this will work, so I could do... Right, so I know the lesson went a little bit deeper than maybe you anticipated or whatever, but it is good practice. You know, don't be afraid to try adding different notes or doing whatever. It's a great way to get out of the same old kind of thing of just playing chords and that's it. This style of guitar allows you, you know, right off the bat. You know, to think differently and play differently, where you're taking super easy chord progressions and you're just coloring them in different ways. Hopefully this is helpful to you. I'm sorry if it's a bit long, but I just want to help you out and maybe get you started on playing in a different way. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.